Have you ever been so terrified of losing something really good that you just accidentally destroyed it while trying to keep it safe?
Oh, yeah, the classic self-sabotage.
Well, exactly. Like you hold on to it so tightly and you're just completely paralyzed by the fear of change, right?
Right.
And then you end up basically suffocating the exact thing you were trying to protect.
It's a horrible feeling.
It really is. And that specific, like deeply frustrating psychological trap is actually the entire engine behind this 2026 live-action drama we're doing a deep dive on today, which is called Countdown to Yes.
Yes, adapted from Roji's manga.
Right, the manga.
Yeah.
And this is an 11-episode BL series. It just wrapped up in March 2026. Scored a really solid 7.8 on IMDb, too.
Which is pretty impressive.
Very impressive. And it's all set against this beautiful, sun-drenched coastal backdrop of Shigasaki. But today we're looking at fan reactions, critical reviews, and the psychology behind it, right?
Exactly. Because we are looking at a story that operates on a very, very specific behavioral loop. One that we see everywhere, honestly, from people's careers to their romantic relationships.
100%.
People just cling to a familiar baseline because the unknown, even if it's a potentially wonderful unknown, it just feels entirely too risky to gamble on.
It's too scary.
Right. So we're really unpacking why this very quiet coastal romance resonated so heavily with audiences, because it's not just a cute show. It functions as this sort of masterclass in the psychology of fear.
Yeah, and the mechanics of unspoken communication, too.
Yeah.
And just honestly, the sheer bravery that it takes to actually change your life.
Absolutely.
So as we sift through all this material today, I really want you listening to this to think about your own comfort zones, whether that's in your career, your friendships, or your romantic life. Just consider how often you maybe settle for like a safe stagnation over a risky but rewarding evolution.
That's a great way to frame it.
Thanks. So let's look at the core dynamic here. The entire premise hinges on these two best friends who are reuniting after a 3-year separation. And their psychological profiles are basically polar opposites.
Completely. So on one side of this dynamic, we have Wataru Nakano, who is played by Gen X member Kakeru Amemiya.
Right.
And Wataru is a freelance photographer. He very much wears his heart on his sleeve. And his default state is just, he's perpetually flustered.
Perpetually, like constantly panicking.
Exactly. And then you contrast him with Minato Yokoi, played by GNJB member Kanami Yoshizawa.
Yes.
And Minato is this stoic, composed office worker. And he has this distinctive, like, really warm, syrupy, deep voice.
Oh, man, the voice.
Right. It's a vocal choice that critics and fans heavily praise because it just grounds his character's emotional weight so perfectly.
It really does. And they lean so heavily into this, what fans are calling a dork-on-dork dynamic.
Yes.
Which I found so fascinating because it completely bypasses the usual tropes you see in this genre.
Oh, totally.
Like they aren't the popular guy and the outcast or whatever. They're literally just two deeply offbeat people who have constructed this highly insulated ecosystem together.
Yeah, their own little world.
Right. They've been obsessed with photography since high school. They go on trips purely to take pictures. They even hold these private little photo exhibitions in their apartment just for each other.
Which is so cute, but also so isolated.
Exactly.
And that isolated ecosystem is actually vital to understanding the central conflict.
Right.
Because they built a world where they only really needed each other. But then that world totally shatters when Minato moves away for work after university.
Which is the catalyst for everything.
Exactly. At that point, Wataru suddenly realizes his feelings for Minato aren't strictly platonic. He realizes he is deeply in love with his best friend.
Yeah.
And his reaction to this massive epiphany is to just completely ghost Minato for 3 years.
He just vanishes.
Yeah.
He cuts off contact entirely. And this is where I kind of want to pause for a second because on paper, ghosting your best friend for 3 years seems entirely irrational if you love them.
It does. It makes no sense to a lot of people.
Right. But Wataru is operating under this really intense scarcity mindset. He is basically convinced that keeping the relationship strictly platonic, even from a distance, is the only way to guarantee Minato's presence in his life.
Right, because the psychology behind Wataru's ghosting is just a textbook avoidant coping mechanism. When he's confronted with a perceived emotional threat, so in this case, the potential of a romantic confession leading to rejection, or maybe a messy breakup down the line.
Yeah, that fear of ruining it.
Exactly. His nervous system basically triggers a full-on flight response. He chooses the certainty of distance over the total uncertainty of intimacy.
Wow.
And his internal logic is flawed, but it's tragically common. He basically believes that having some of Minato, preserved as a distant memory or this abstract best friend is fundamentally safer than risking having none of Minato.
It totally reminds me of those people who, like, they buy a beautiful, incredibly expensive piece of art and then they lock it in a dark vault so it doesn't get sun damaged.
Oh, that's exactly it.
Right. Like, Wataru thought that by completely shutting down the communication, he was putting the friendship in a cryogenic freezer or a museum display case.
Yes, perfectly preserved.
Exactly. He believed if nobody touched it, it wouldn't break. But relationships aren't inanimate objects.
No, they're living things.
Right. If you lock a living thing in the dark for 3 years, it atrophies. It dies.
Yeah, and he essentially traumatized the very person he was trying to protect from pain.
Seriously.
And the inciting incident of the series is the collision of that exact trauma with Minato's return.
Yes. The big return.
Right. 3 years into this total silence, Minato secures a job transfer back to their hometown of Shigasaki. He tracks Wataru down, corners him, and right out of the gate, he boldly proposes, "Live with me."
Which is such a wild move. And honestly, I have to challenge Minato's strategy here just a little bit.
Really? Okay, let's hear it.
Well, fans praise his high EQ, right, his emotional intelligence. They call him this patient architect who uses a boiling the frog strategy to just slowly integrate himself back into Wataru's life.
Right.
But isn't there something inherently manipulative about that?
That's interesting. How so?
Well, he knows Wataru is easily overwhelmed. So instead of demanding like an actual emotional conversation about the last 3 years of being ghosted, he just functionally moves into his house.
He does, yeah.
He orchestrates this domestic life until Wataru basically has no choice but to say yes to a relationship. It feels a little trapping.
It is a completely fair critique, and it's actually one that viewers debated heavily online.
I can imagine.
But the distinction between manipulation and emotional architecture really comes down to intent and consent.
Okay.
Manipulation is self-serving, right? It's deceptive. Minato's approach is highly calculated, yes, but it's born out of an understanding of Wataru's specific emotional paralysis.
Right. He knows Wataru will bolt.
Exactly. Minato recognizes that a direct verbal confrontation is just going to trigger Wataru's flight response all over again. So this boiling the frog strategy isn't about trapping Wataru against his will.
It's not.
No, it's about systematically dismantling Wataru's irrational fears. He's proving, through daily, undeniable actions, that a shared life is safe. He's essentially creating a secure container for Wataru to finally relax in.
Okay, that makes sense.
Wow.
So if a direct verbal confrontation is completely off the table, how do these two actually navigate the trauma of a 3-year separation?
Right. How do they talk without talking?
Exactly. And this is where I think the adaptation truly shines, because they substitute dialogue with a completely different medium. The camera actually becomes their second language.
Yes. The use of photography in the series goes way beyond just being an aesthetic choice. It is a literal structural mechanism for communication.
Yeah.
For Wataru, the camera lens functions as a physical and psychological shield.
Mm-hmm.
When you look through a viewfinder, you're placing a literal machine between yourself and the world.
Right, you're hidden.
It allows Wataru to observe Minato intimately, studying his microexpressions, focusing on the soft lighting across his face, without ever incurring the terrifying risk of being observed in return.
Wow, yeah. The observer is safe, but the subject is vulnerable.
Exactly.
It functions exactly like a clunky translator app on your phone.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Like, imagine two people who actually speak the exact same language fluently, right?
Yeah.
But they're both so terrified of mispronouncing a word or saying the wrong thing that they just refuse to speak out loud.
Right. The stakes feel too high.
Exactly. So instead, they type everything into an app and let the machine pass the message back and forth. It creates this completely sterile buffer.
A buffer that keeps Wataru safe from accountability, mostly.
Yes.
As long as he communicates his love through a photograph rather than a sentence, he can maintain plausible deniability.
You can just say, oh, I'm just practicing my photography.
Exactly. He can continue to repeat the mantra that they are just best friends. However, the deep irony of the camera is that it inevitably captures the objective truth.
Right.
Wataru's words constantly deny his romantic feelings, but his photographs of Minato are saturated with this undeniable, profound affection.
You see this perfectly executed in the private gallery scene in episode 3.
Oh, that scene is brilliant.
It's so good.
Mm.
They end up decorating their kitchen with these photographs they've taken of each other over the years. And it's this stunningly intimate sequence where they are mapping out their entire shared history, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're acknowledging everything they mean to each other without speaking a single line of dialogue about it.
One word.
And the directors, Shinju Funabiki and Nomura Nao, they even use this auditory motif of the camera shutter clicks to transition between the present moment and their university flashbacks.
And that auditory cue really reinforces how heavily they rely on the lens to process time and memory.
Yeah.
The camera is so deeply embedded in their dynamic that the ultimate climax of the show actually requires its removal.
Why do you have to let it go?
Exactly. In episode 10, Wataru is standing in his own photography exhibition. He looks around the room and is forced into a breakthrough. He realizes that every single photo he ever took of Minato was functionally a love letter.
Oh.
He has been shouting his feelings for years, just not with his voice.
And that realization culminates in that huge beach scene where Wataru physically drops his camera into the sand to answer Minato face to face.
He relinquishes the shield.
Yes. But, okay, I want to talk about the friction of getting to that beach scene. The slow burn.
Because while dropping the camera is a beautiful payoff, the journey to get Wataru to that point was agonizing.
Truly agonizing.
This reliance on unspoken communication fuels the most polarizing element of the entire series, which is this brutal, unyielding slow burn.
The pacing really is the defining characteristic of the series, and it split the audience right down the middle.
Completely.
If you look at fan reactions, particularly the weekly discussion threads on Reddit's Our Boy Slove, you see this really sharp divide.
What were they saying?
Well, for viewers who enjoy the tension of the almost, the deliberate pacing was a masterpiece of yearning.
Right.
But for others, the middle episodes felt less like romantic development and more like emotional torture. Emotional torture is a great way to put it.
Sure.
Let's examine that emotional whiplash,
Yeah.
because the show swings wildly between intense vulnerability and complete regression.
Yes, it really does.
Like, we hit an incredible high in episode 6 with what fans universally dubbed the Reiwa-era kiss.
Oh, such a big moment.
It was heavily praised for its modern, explicit focus on consent. Like, Minato completely drops his stoic guard, looks at Wataru, and softly asks, "May I kiss you?"
Yeah.
It is a quiet, incredibly earned moment of absolute clarity.
And the immediate follow-up to that clarity is the anticlimax of episode 7.
Oof, the morning after.
The morning after the kiss, Wataru wakes up entirely flustered, right? His nervous system is completely overwhelmed by the reality that their dynamic has permanently shifted.
He's waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. He's waiting for a massive conversation. But Minato acts as though absolutely nothing has changed.
Which is so frustrating.
We learn that Minato essentially fell asleep immediately after the kiss, leaving Wataru to just spiral into overthinking in complete isolation.
Which is where my patience with Wataru started to wear incredibly thin. And I know a lot of viewers felt the exact same way.
Oh, absolutely.
The kiss triggers Wataru's friendship loop. Instead of leaning into the progress, Wataru just scrambles backwards. He frantically retreats into his safety zone, and he's loudly insisting to Minato that they are just friends. And honestly, I have to call out Wataru's behavior here as deeply selfish.
It is selfish, yeah.
Like, I understand avoidant attachment, but stringing someone along, crossing a romantic boundary, and then slamming the door in their face to protect your own comfort zone is cruel. Minato is paying the price for Wataru's fear.
You are identifying the exact friction that leads to the lowest point of the narrative, which is the Cold War in episode 8.
Yes.
Minato possesses high emotional intelligence, but he's not a martyr.
No.
He reaches a breaking point where he realizes he cannot force Wataru to be brave. But he also knows he can't mentally survive regressing back to a platonic friendship after crossing that physical and emotional boundary.
Right, he can't go back.
So, to protect his own mental health, the patient architect stops building, he pulls away.
And the visual storytelling during this Cold War sequence is just devastating.
Oh, it really is.
There is that moment where Minato is holding a bouquet of unseen flowers behind his back during a photo shoot. It perfectly encapsulates this massive reservoir of love he's ready to offer. But he has to hide it because Wataru refuses to look at it.
Yeah.
And there's also that brilliant scene at the playground where they're both sitting on the swings, but their momentum is completely out of sync.
I love that scene.
So they are physically next to each other, but they're entirely out of time with each other's emotional readiness.
And the live-action adaptation makes this desynchronization feel much heavier than the original manga did.
Really? How so?
Well, in Aji's manga, the 3-year gap where Wataru ghosted Minato is primarily established through internal monologue. It functions as background context. But the television series actively utilizes frequent flashbacks to their university years. The viewer constantly sees how deeply happy and connected they used to be.
So the audience is acutely aware of exactly what was lost.
Precisely. The structure forces the viewer to experience the trauma of those stolen years alongside Minato.
Wow.
Because we see the joy they could have had, Wataru's hesitation and his subsequent retreat in episode 8 become much harder for the audience to forgive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We feel the heavy, compounding weight of his cowardice.
So if they were stuck in this brutal cycle of Wataru taking one step forward and two steps back, what actually breaks the loop?
Right.
Because in a typical high-drama romance, this is the part of the story where we get a massive external conflict, right?
A car crash or something.
Exactly. A corporate takeover,
Yeah.
or some toxic, jealous ex arriving to stir up trouble, or a dramatic chase through an airport in the pouring rain. But this show completely ignores all of those tropes.
It ignores them because it is firmly rooted in the Iyashike genre.
Right, the healing genre.
Yes. Iyashike translates to healing. And stories in this genre derive their dramatic resolution not from explosive external conflicts, but from the quiet processing of internal emotions.
I see.
The atmosphere of Chigasaki, the coastal scenery, the warm, saturated lighting, it all reinforces this tone. The resolution to their conflict comes through the embrace of everyday domesticity.
And we see that shift begin in episode 9, during the conversations on what fans call the BFF boyfriend's bridge.
Yes.
The safety net of their platonic friendship is permanently dismantled there. Wataru is finally forced to acknowledge that his silence, which he thought was a protective shield, is actually the weapon causing Minato the most pain.
And Minato drops the routine of the endlessly patient manager, finally.
He does.
In episode 10, he issues a quiet but firm ultimatum. He starts packing his bags. He demonstrates that he is willing to walk away entirely if Wataru cannot meet him halfway.
And Minato packing his bags forces Wataru to confront the reality of their living situation, which is basically a massive codependency trap.
It really was.
Like, by agreeing to Minato's proposal to live with me right at the start of the series, Wataru completely bypassed the traditional dating phase.
He skipped all the hard parts.
Exactly. He managed to secure all the benefits of intimacy, eating meals together, sharing domestic space, having emotional support, without ever having to adopt the terrifying official label of being a boyfriend.
He essentially found a loophole in intimacy.
Exactly. It is like signing up for the premium subscription benefits of a service, but refusing to actually sign the contract or pay the monthly fee.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Wataru wanted all the security of a partner with none of the emotional risk. Yeah. But when Minato starts packing, the loophole closes.
It triggers Wataru's ultimate psychological epiphany.
Yeah.
For years, Wataru's scarcity mindset convinced him that dating Minato might eventually lead to a breakup, and therefore he would lose him.
Right. The what ifs.
But watching Minato pack his bags makes him realize the fundamental flaw in his math. Losing Minato right now, today, because of his own cowardice, is an absolute certainty.
And that realization is what finally propels him to say yes. In the finale, episode 11, Wataru agrees to cohabitation, not as best friends hiding from the world, but explicitly as lovers.
It's so satisfying.
It is. And what I find so beautiful about this finale is how it redefines romantic victory.
Right.
We don't get fireworks. The show rewards Wataru's bravery with a montage of mundane domestic rituals.
We watch them fold laundry, we watch them cook dinner, we watch them stand in an appliance store trying to choose a new washing machine.
Yes.
And the show pairs these everyday actions with the recurring visual motif of the white lisianthus flowers, which were first introduced in an episode 2 flashback and actually symbolize eternal love.
I love that detail. It makes the argument that true romance isn't found in a grand cinematic gesture. True romance is choosing a washing machine with someone.
It really is.
It pushes you to reconsider how we measure the success of a relationship. Like, the most profound milestones in our lives are often the ones that look the most boring on paper. Yeah. A grand gesture is just a one-time performance.
Right.
But choosing a washing machine is a quiet commitment to spending 1,000 boring Tuesdays with the exact same person.
It suggests that the ultimate achievement in love isn't just the confession itself. The confession is only the doorway. The actual achievement is the collaborative construction of a sanctuary, a shared daily life where neither person has to hide behind a camera lens or walk on eggshells to protect the status quo.
Which brings this entire discussion right back to you listening to this.
Yes.
Wataru spent a decade letting his fear of the unknown dictate his actions. His journey is a mirror that proves how incredibly easy it is for us to dress up our fear of failure as protecting the relationship or being practical.
We all do it.
We do. So ask yourself, what safety net are you clinging to in your own life right now? What situation or relationship or career move are you treating like a museum exhibit, refusing to touch it because you are too afraid to see what happens when the dynamic changes?
And as you process that, consider the title of the show itself. Countdown to yes.
Okay.
Culturally, we are conditioned to associate a countdown with an explosion, like a bomb ticking down.
Right, like something bad is about to happen.
We expect something destructive, chaotic, and finalized at the very end of the timer, but there is an alternative way to frame it. What if we thought of the countdown like a space launch?
Oh, I love that. Reaching zero doesn't mean the end of your world. It means you have finally gathered enough fuel to leave orbit and explore an entirely new one.
Exactly.
So it's time to stop observing your own life through a lens, drop the camera in the sand, and start actually participating in it. You might just find out that the unknown isn't a void to be terrified of, but a foundation waiting to be built upon.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.